And a lot of people have dressed really well. Is there
Right.
any way to bring it down
I'll
2
try.
degrees?
I'll try. I can't.
Just
I
a
can't
couple.
guarantee it'll work, but I'll
All
try.
right, okay.
Welcome. Welcome to those who are in the sanctuary today, and welcome to those who are joining us through streaming, of which there are many. We're here today at the celebration of life of Gregory Fox, and I know you may be saying, what's the difference between a funeral and a celebration of life? In some ways, not a lot, and in some ways, a lot. One of the things that is beautiful about it is, like a funeral and a shiva, everyone is going to be invited to speak, but we're going to break things into two parts. If you're like me, meaning you're Jewish, I need a nosh in between to fill me with the spirit of talking. So for the first part of the ceremony, we're going to have some folks share words of honoring Gregory's life. We all know that it was cut short too soon, but we also know that it was filled with moments that he would want us to be celebrating today and celebrating him. I want to express our condolences on all of our behalfs to Gregory's older brother Daniel and sister-in-law Nurit, who are joining us from British Columbia, to Amy Schell, who is here right now, his stepdaughter, along with his grand-stepdaughter, Brianna, and to his loving partner of 6 years, Faye Glicksman, as well as to nephew, niece, and cousins and family members who are mostly joining us by streaming, and some of whom are here. It's customary to pick a couple of brief readings, and I picked this on behalf, and Gregory, forgive me if it's the wrong thing. I'm going to quote from the philosopher Seneca. In the presence of death, we must continue to sing the song of life. We must be able to accept death and go from its presence, better able to bear our burdens and to lighten the load of others. Out of our sorrows should come understanding, and through our sorrows, we join with all of those before us who have had to suffer, and all of those who will yet have to do so. Let us not be gripped by the fear of death. If another day be added to our lives, let us joyfully receive it. But let us not anxiously depend on our tomorrows. Though we grieve the death of our loved one, we accept them and hold on to our memories as a precious gift. Let us make the best of our loved ones while they are with us, and let us not bury our love with death. And from the Talmud, Rabbi Tarfon, the day is short and the task is great and the workers are sluggish. And the reward is bountiful and the master insists. This was a favorite teaching of Rabbi Tarfon. You are not obliged to finish the work, but neither are you free to abandon it. If you have studied much, you will earn great reward, because the efforts lead to ultimate success. But the reward for each person's contribution to the righteous project is reserved for the future. It's my honor to begin by inviting Thea up to the bima.
As I look out into this congregation of friends, I am so moved by this large group who have shown up to honor Gregory's memory today and to support me and Gregory's stepdaughter Amy and her daughter Brianna. I also want to say that that since mid-October, after we learned about Gregory's diagnosis, I have been so warmed by the phone calls and visits and your hugs and the cards and messages sent to Gregory and to me, offers of help and invitations for me to join you for dinner, so many of you. I hope that you will understand how much all of those reaches out from friends and relatives have meant to me. They really have. And I'm looking at so many of you, and it applies to all of you who are here. Many of you know that Gregory and I met at the Ann Arbor Jewish Community Center, as we call it, the JCC, or some are calling it the J now, in October of 2018. Gregory used to tell people after that the JCC was a good pickup joint. He also enjoyed telling people that our meeting involved 2 cases of mistaken identity. Many of you have already heard this story. Most of you who heard it from him. He loved telling it and retelling it. So I won't repeat it now, but it would take up too much time. But anyway, if you haven't heard it, I'll be happy to tell it to you another time, or perhaps you can hear it from someone who else became familiar with it. Jack, right? Okay. When we met, Gregory told me that he had lived in Ann Arbor since he was 12 years old. I asked him where he was from originally, and he answered, South Porcupine. Just South Porcupine. No mention of Ontario, no mention of Canada. How many of you got this same answer from him when you asked him? You could see how much delight he enjoyed watching the blank looks that he received. He also would tell you that there was no North Porcupine. Early on, we discovered our mutual love of classical music, especially chamber music. When Gregory visited me or when I visited him, music was always playing. I do think that besides our mutual interests in politics and civic affairs, we bonded over classical music. We bonded over chamber music. Gregory knew so much about music, classical music, and especially about the composers. His memory of little details of their lives amazed me. Often he'd hear some music playing, and then he would tell me what Miss Cook, who taught music appreciation at Tappan Junior High School, said about the piece or the composer. I could not begin to give you a count of how many times I heard Miss Cook quoted over the 6 years that Gregory and I were together, even in the hospital room where he was, and even at Atria, senior living. And I don't think it would be a stretch to say I heard Miss Cook daily. Miss Cook obviously played an important part in building his music foundation. Gregory would quiz me, by the way, asking if I recognized a piece that was playing on one of our favorite classical music radio stations. If I didn't recognize it, he would be very surprised and ask how I got that far without knowing it. In one of our early conversations, Gregory expressed what he was looking for in our budding relationship: to join in long walks together, cook and enjoy having dinners together, and watching movies in the evening. Well, I said that sounded fine to me, yet I told Gregory that I wasn't someone who was happy sticking close to home all of the time, that I loved getting together with friends and especially attending concerts, and I went to a lot of concerts. Would he be willing to join me occasionally, I asked. Gregory's quiet life soon changed, and quickly. Attending live concerts was not something that Gregory had previously done very often. He would listen to his many records, his Canadian accent, his records, and of course he had a big CD collection. Our concert attendance was not limited to Ann Arbor either, because I had season tickets to Chamber Music Detroit, whose performances for the most part take place in the Seligman Performing Arts Center in Beverly Hills. Soon, Gregory joined me on my trips there. It was so nice having his company and sharing these wonderful live music experiences. He was impressed that Chamber Music Detroit served cookies at intermissions, and he often highlighted that to people when we talked about attending those concerts. And they serve cookies at intermission. Gregory picked out a couple of familiar faces in the Chamber Music Detroit audience, too: Jenny Lieberman and Robert Glassman. And thus I met Jenny and Robert and have come to look forward to seeing them frequently at concert events, both in Ann Arbor and in the Detroit area. I also introduced Gregory to the annual 2-week Great Lakes Chamber Music Festival in June. I explained to Gregory that the festival entailed frequent drives back and forth to Bloomfield Hills or Beverly Hills, sometimes daily. I asked him if that would be too much travel in that compressed period of time. "No, I'll try it," he said. Do they serve cookies at intermission? Better than that, I said. Gregory enjoyed attending the many festival afterglows, especially when we could sit at a table eating and talking with members of the Emerson String Quartet or other soloists. And we had a deal. I drove to those concerts in Beverly Hills or Bloomfield Hills, and he drove back home. My next chamber music Detroit concert is in March, and I've already been thinking that drive is going to feel longer and lonely. And as far as Gregory's expectation that we would watch movies together in the evening, I don't think either of us could have anticipated what was in store and that I would deliver on that aspect. I'm looking for some of my colleagues right now. In November of 2020, I joined the Ann Arbor Jewish Film Festival Committee, and for 4 years, we spent November through March screening 4, 5, or 6 short films almost every evening when we weren't out at a concert. Returning to Gregory's list for a moment, yes, we did take those long walks regularly, and we cooked and enjoyed many, many lovely dinners together. As Gregory had traveled extensively in his 20s, and later with Cindy when they returned year after year to New York's Finger Lakes, he thirsted for more travel in retirement. And I am so glad that we were able to take a 1-month Western U.S. road trip in 22, visiting friends and seeing breathtaking sights, and this past summer to Scandinavia for 3 weeks. His illness this fall curtailed our planning for what we thought would be our next trip. Gregory often observed that the ease in our relationship was influenced by our having enjoyed good, loving marriages. I think he was right. We respected the other's marriages and the love, and pardon me here, and the love we honored in the memories of our spouses, Cindy and Elliot. I think Gregory would have enjoyed knowing Elliot, and I was lucky. Both Elliot and Gregory had great senses of humor, and could they make me laugh. Gregory was a most gentle, kind-hearted, generous, supportive partner, and I am filled with sorrow by this swift, cruel loss. Before I close, I have some further thank yous to say. I didn't want to go on and on, but there's so much that came to my mind. I am fortunate to value and enjoy many, many friendships, and I would like to thank my relatives and friends for welcoming and embracing Gregory into their lives too. He very much enjoyed being your friend. In turn, I would like to thank Gregory's relatives and friends for welcoming me into your circles as well. And a huge thank you goes to Gregory's stepdaughter, Amy, for all of the phone calls she made and the tasks she willingly and seemingly so easily took on. She would remind me that she was using her social worker skills. I think a few of Gregory's medical care team and caregivers are watching, or maybe even in the sanctuary today. They reached out to me and asked me to send them the information. I continue to think about how extraordinarily skilled, talented, and most of all, how kind and generous and caring they were. Dr. Matthew Wilsey, his neurosurgeon, Dr. John Fortunato, Gregory's neuro-oncologist, who learned about Puccini's Chrysanthemum from Gregory. That's what we were hearing before the service began. Sandra Gillespie, who was Dr. Fortunato's nurse and right-hand person. Dr. Donna Edwards, radiation oncologist, who spent so much time with us. And Dr. Maria Silvera, palliative care. Many nurses, med techs, and aides at Atria Senior Living gave Gregory tender love and care, and he appreciated them. Also, a thank you must go to my friend Bud Thomas, who spent hours and hours culling through photos to put together the slideshow that many of you will see later. And I understand that Claire Kinberg has assembled more photos to add to the slideshow that we will see. Finally, Gregory once mused that if there is an afterlife, he hoped that he would see Cindy again. After Gregory died on the morning of December 27th, and his nurse Annie called me at home with the sad news, I went to see him accompanied by our good friend Jack Billy. Gregory looked so peaceful, and I remarked to Jack that his face seemed to be reflecting a slight smile. I hoped that smile meant that Gregory had seen and was together with Cindy again.
Going from the recent and now moving backward into the past, I'm going to share some remarks through video from relatives. We're going to start with Dan and Nareed and then Barbara, who thankfully were able to visit him while he was alive, and so made the visits at that time. So we're including their remarks by streaming now.
Thanks to Rabbi King for organizing this event and providing the electronic means for others to join in from a distance. I'm Daniel Fox. I'm Gregory's older brother. I live in Vancouver, Canada, with my wife Nareed and our children Shelley and Joel, and their children Subi and Asher and Ari and Oliver. No one expects to lose their younger siblings, so when it happens, especially after a short and fatal illness, there is a shock that takes some time to absorb and reconcile oneself with. I haven't fully accommodated myself to the reality that Gregory is gone. Most of you know Gregory as a student and an adult, but Gregory and I grew up together in Toronto, and so today I will say something about our early years there, as well as in Ann Arbor. I understand there are photos on display on the screen in the social hall to view afterwards. Gregory was fond of saying that he was born in a small mining town in northern Ontario called, somewhat ironically, South Porcupine. It's 400 miles north of Toronto, and just how a Jewish family from Toronto found themselves up there is a story in itself. Our father, David Fox, served in the Canadian Army, and after the war ended, he obtained his teacher's qualifications from the University of Toronto. He applied to teach in Toronto's numerous high schools, but this was the 1940s, and anti-Jewish quotas at the time restricted his chances in Toronto, so he applied far afield, which included South Porcupine. He was hired there, and he became a popular music and math teacher. And there was a lot of snow. For a small town, South Porcupine had, to my eyes, an enormous array of giant snow plows, which cleared the streets by piling all the snow on the sides of the road. So Gregory and I dug tunnels through the huge snowbanks that resulted. Probably not very safe. I recall our mother complaining about how long it took to bundle us up in snowsuits, only to have for us to declare we needed to go to the bathroom. She had to unbundle us again. Eventually we moved back to Toronto, and a year later bought a house in a new suburb called Don Mills. Both our parents worked and had long commutes, so Gregory and I were assigned kitchen cleanup duties after school and after supper too. So we alternated washing and drying dishes by hand and monitoring each other to ensure quality control. Gregory and I shared a bedroom for some of those years, and we enjoyed childhood play fighting and acting out our boyish adventure fantasies. Our father was a gifted musician and pianist, and we developed an appreciation of music from him. But our parents separated, and there was an acrimonious divorce. The trauma shattered our family stability, our mother relocated us to Ann Arbor, Michigan, where we were welcomed with open arms. Literally, the neighborhood welcome wagon was at our door with gifts, maps, and a lot of good cheer. We felt generally welcomed in the community, and we appreciated that immensely. Gregory and I improved academically, whereas Toronto schools at the time were very strict. Ann Arbor enjoyed a more relaxed classroom structure that welcomed debate and student participation. Although we couldn't vote at the time, Greg and I were not citizens and we were too young anyway, we participated in elections by joining the Democratic Party, which then was a minority in the city, and we went door to door canvassing for supporters and calling on them on election day. What was frustrating for us were all the excuses people had for not going to vote on election day. One excuse we remembered was, quote, "I can't vote today, my cat just had kittens." We went on 2 road trips across the U.S. Using campgrounds to save on the cost of motels. And in the campground, Gregory's job was to inflate the air mattresses for the tent. He didn't like doing that and complained about it. Much more recently, and decades later, when he visited us here in Vancouver, I prepared a fold-out bed for him that had an air mattress on it. Of course, I inflated it before he arrived, and of course, I pointed out that this time I had inflated the air mattress for him. I think he appreciated the return favor. But getting back to our childhood, at one campground, we inadvertently left some food out on the picnic table overnight. In the middle of the night, we hear a noise outside. Gregory peeks out with the flashlight, and he wailed, "It's a raccoon, and he's got the Oreos." At home, Gregory was a rather fussy eater. For Gregory, peas had to be canned, not frozen, but corn had to be frozen, not canned. So we asked him, "How are you ever going to travel anywhere if you're so fussy at home?" Well, Gregory answered that by motorcycling across South Asia and eating anything sold in street markets all along the way. And he was in Thailand, I recall, traveling through the mountains where villagers had just killed a tiger. They invited Gregory to share in the meat, which he did. Well, so much for the fussy eater. Gregory and I and our mother all graduated from the University of Michigan, and there was one year where all 3 of us attended at the same time. After graduation, I returned to Canada while Gregory chose to remain in Ann Arbor, where he had various jobs before he began his career in photography. Many of his photographs are on display here today, where his creative and humanistic qualities are clearly seen. I visited him in Ann Arbor when he rented a second-floor older home on First Avenue. And Gregory is such a quiet person that the landlady who lived below him complained about the noise his toaster made when it popped up. In later years, both of us took up the espresso hobby, and we compared machines and techniques. It's lucky he wasn't still living in that First Avenue place, because espresso is very noisy and messy. Our father eventually developed dementia, and Gregory and I arranged for him to move to one of the best facilities in Toronto, where he was well cared for. Gregory made sure that he had extra helpers to attend to make sure that he was comfortable and his clothes were dry clean. We would arrange to meet in Toronto, usually around Passover, to visit our father, our cousins, and each other. And that's where Rita and I first met Cindy and Amy. Gregory always suggested we visit certain places, like the Tilly Hat Store, our old home in Don Mills, and our paternal grandparents' home in Forest Hills. In 2016, when Shelley and Damien had their wedding at a remote place on the north end of Vancouver Island, Gregory to eliminate gerrymandering in the drawing of electoral boundaries. He was very concerned about fairness. He looked after his wife Cindy and our mother in their very difficult later years. These responsibilities took their toll on his mental and physical well-being, yet he took them on without complaint. And he was fortunate enough to meet Thea, who became his partner for the last 6 years, and who brought joy and more music to his life. Gregory devoted his life to his family and to his community, and his loss will be felt by everyone he met. And thank you for joining us in this celebration of his life.
My name is Mary Fox, and I'm Gregory's sister-in-law. So sad and miss him so much. I want to let you know how much he loved the Hebrew language. He went to Ulpan in his youth in a kibbutz in Israel, and he developed love for the Hebrew language. Every time we met, he asked me to refresh his skills and speak to him in Hebrew. A few days before he passed away, when we could barely talk, and we were on the phone, he said, Boker Tov. So I'd like to read to you a poem, a Hebrew poem, and then I'll read a translation. It's called At the End of the Road, בסוף הדרך, written by נורית גלבון. בכל מקום יש תהום לאמיצים וצל לעייפים, ומעיין שקריאותו ניגרת. בכל שחרית יש טל לאוהבים, ואור לאוהבים, ואבנים קרות, ועשב פרא. בכל ערבית יש קץ לסוערים, ועץ לאמירים, וסלע לשוכבים בסוף הדרך. And the translation. In every place there is an abyss for the brave, and a shadow for the tired, and a spring, its coolness flowing. In every dawn there is dew for the trembling, and light for the lovers, and cold stones, and wild grass. During every nightfall, there is an end for the spirited, and a tree for the lonely, and a rock for those who lie down at the end of the road. Gregory will be remembered and will be greatly, greatly missed. Thank you.
I'm grateful. Hello from Ottawa. I'm grateful to Thea for giving me this opportunity to share some thoughts about Gregory on this difficult occasion. And my sister Joanne also asked me to say how sorry she is that she can't be there with you today. She's out of the country. But while the following are my thoughts, she wanted me to say how much Gregory meant to her and how very much she will miss him. Gregory was my very dear cousin. We never lived in the same city, but that didn't affect his strong presence in our family. Joanne and I well remember all the special family occasions when Gregory would come up from Ann Arbor. Most especially, we remember the Passover Seders, first at our parents' home and then at Joanne's house. We all loved when he expanded our circle to include Cindy and Amy. I have such a strong memory of much laughter with Amy in my mother's kitchen as we were preparing food. And then later, Thea joined, and she immediately became an important member of our family. Gregory always brought much love with him. I don't know if he realized how important an influence he had on me throughout my life. He was 8 years older, which was a significant age gap when we were young, but somehow we forged a strong relationship that lasted He was so soft-spoken and gentle, but to me, he lived such a big, vibrant, engaged life. I remember the years he spent traveling through Asia and Europe on his motorcycle. He would come to visit us, his curly hair long and standing out like a wide halo around his head. In my memory, it was almost a foot wide around his face, held in place with a headband. And music. He introduced me to so much music that ended up playing a very big part of my life. Classical music, South American flutes, of course, since he played the recorder on his travels, and Sephardic music, something that ended up being a major focus of my own musical life. And politics. Gregory introduced me to politics. He never lectured, he just lived his convictions, joining demonstrations in the 60s, later traveling to Nicaragua, and doing whatever he could, right up until a few months before the end, to try and elect candidates that he believed in. I recently read part of a speech that Lyndon Johnson delivered in Ann Arbor at the University of Michigan, very early in his presidency. It was the speech that launched the Great Society project. Johnson described the Great Society as a place where men, that was the language back then. I know, Gregory is rolling over at the thought of my quoting this at this time. But a place where men are more concerned with the quality of their goals than the quantity of their goods. I've wondered if Gregory was among the thousands of students who were at that speech, but those words describe his life. Gregory never cared about material possessions or wealth. He lived to do what he could to make the world what he believed it could be. What an example he set, and how much love he gave and received. I will miss my dear cousin so very much. I wish I was there with you all now today. Much love, and thank you for this opportunity. Bye-bye.
Amy, can I ask you to come forward?
Thank you all for coming today and sharing in this for Gregory. Gregory was a part of my life starting in 1985. He was my stepdad for 40 years. Somebody pointed that out to me, and I was amazed at it's been that long. He supported me, he saw me for me, and he always accepted me. When I was younger, I hated getting my picture taken. Now I'm actually grateful as I look back on all the photos that he took. Many of them are the only memories that I have of my past. Gregory supported my college career. He took photos of the tigers and the snow leopards that I researched as an undergrad at Michigan State University. One photo, the tiger photo, in fact, became so special to me that I actually have it tattooed back here. It always is watching my back, and now I feel like I always have Gregory with me wherever I go. Esther, Gregory's mom, loved the picture that he took of me with the Arabian stallion, she always said, that I trained at MSU, and so I had that hanging on my wall at home to kind of remember Esther's presence also. She passed in May of last year. When I would visit Gregory at his home in Ann Arbor, I think Dan made mention of this, he always offered an amazing cappuccino. He was always big on cappuccinos and would battle Dan to who made the best one. So there you go. He was very proud of his barista abilities. Typically, I would bring him shortbread cookies, and he always liked the dark ones. So to me, they're burnt, but to him, they were perfect. Or I made him sugar cookies, which of course were the Canadian flag symbol, the maple leaf. So, and they always complimented his coffees very well. When Gregory would come to visit my place out in DeWitt, which is just a little north of Lansing, he would help with any projects I had going on. One time, we decided we were going to make shelves for my cats. And so I collected all of the supplies, and we designed them together, and then we hung them up together, and the cats absolutely loved them. He also at one point took a woodworking class at Washtenaw Community College, and he made a box with wood that had a cat face in it. And I'll tell you what, yes, you see cats in the box, but they never go in it anymore, but don't tell him that. I still have it though. So always when he would come and visit me up in wherever I was located in DeWitt, he would bring his camera and he would take pictures of my animals. Obviously, I'm an animal lover. I have many of them, and cats too, but I couldn't bring them. This one here, this is Coco, and I had her when she was about 4 weeks old. She was found on the side of the road. Side note, Gregory loved to grow organic catnip for me and then bring it up for the cats. So he took some very nice pictures of this 4-week-old Coco eating the catnip. Well, Coco actually became a very big part of Gregory's mom's life because she adopted Coco from me, and then as Gregory would visit her in Balfour, Coco would keep him company while Gregory was taking care of Esther. And then he would send me pictures of Coco actually laying down with Esther in her last days, and it gave me a lot of comfort to know that I had a little part in helping Esther feel more comfortable and safe with Coco next to her side. Gregory was notorious for being asked to take senior pictures of my family. I find it interesting that he not only took pictures of me graduating or my senior pictures in high school, but he took some of my cousins and my daughter Brianna. He would also make appearances at Brianna's competitions with his camera. He really loved the picture of her swimming, the action motion of her doing that, and then her cheerleading, of course. Graduations were another one of his specialties, not only Brianna's graduation, but my graduation too with my master's. Gregory also helped with the typical dad things, you know. Dad, I don't know what to do with my car, the brakes are squeaking, or whatever else with the car situations. He was also good at looking up the best things per Consumer Reports. So if I need to make a big purchase, I would call Gregory, he'd get on Consumer Reports or talk to Thea, and they would figure out what was the best model to buy. And one point in time, he helped me get a car so that my daughter, his granddaughter, could have her very first vehicle, which is the car shown there is mine. He loved being a grandpa, and he loved taking pictures of his favorite subject. Gregory also made it possible for Brianna and myself to travel to Italy in 2017. It was an absolutely amazing trip and one I will always treasure. It means a lot to me because Gregory also traveled a lot overseas, and it was very important to him, so it was wonderful to be able to share with Brianna the opportunity of going overseas and seeing you can do this too. Last but not least, some people have already mentioned it, Gregory always made sure that I was going to vote. He would probably start calling 3 to 4 months before the election would start, and are you registered? I was registered last year. I think I'm still registered this year. Are you sure? Do you know where to go? Do you have all the information? Do you know who to vote for? So it was I felt pressured sometimes. I'm like, Gregory, I promise you, I'm going to vote. And so we got into the tradition that I would take a picture of my service dog and a little sticker that says I voted, and I would send that to Gregory so he knew Amy voted. Gregory was my main support person in my life. He was always there during the good times and the hard times. He talked me through some of the most difficult challenges in my life. I find myself wanting to reach out to him and realizing he's gone. Gone in physical form, but here in spirit. I still talk to him. He was my anchor. He was kind, giving, funny, and the best stepdad that I could have ever asked for. Thanks.
I've asked Michael Apple to speak and share a little bit of Gregory's social activism.
I'm so honored to have been asked to share some memories about Gregory's work in the progressive and activist community in Ann Arbor. As I reached out to friends of Gregory's and mine from those years, 30 and 40 years ago now, it became clear how important those times in that community were to many of us, and what a unique and important role Gregory played. Gregory's contributions highlight two important things that I've no doubt Gregory would urge us to always keep in focus: the importance of building community and of preserving that community's memory and legacy. By naming just some of the efforts where Gregory's presence was important, you can get a feel for his work. The Latin American Solidarity Committee, LASC, the Ann Arbor Central America Sister City Task Force, the Interfaith Council for Peace and Justice, New Jewish Agenda, the Dean Baker for House of Representatives campaign, and Agenda, Ann Arbor's alternative news monthly, published from 1986 through 1998. Many of the people in this room or joining us from beyond Ann Arbor were deeply involved in these organizations. They were generous in sharing their memories, which I've tried to weave together. My words today are truly not my own, as I am sharing our collective memories, our shared fondness for Gregory as a friend and comrade, and our deep appreciation for the roles he played in our lives. Not surprisingly, some of the strongest memories revolve around photography. A favorite was when members of LASC jumped to the front of a parade led by the U of M marching band from the practice field to the stadium on game day. The LASC activists held up giant letters that to the band and marchers behind them spelled out "M, go blue." But the front spelled out "No Contra Aid," a reference to an intensive effort to stop U.S. aid going to the Nicaragua Contra forces then trying to overthrow the Sandinista government. The carefully staged action allowed LASC to credit the event as the largest protest in Ann Arbor history. It lasted only a short time until the spectators and local police realized what LASC was up to. Liz Gottlieb remembers, "We jumped in front of the U of M marching band parade with a giant no Contra Aid message and had literal seconds before getting kicked off. Gregory, ready and able to capture that crazy, intensely hilarious moment perfectly. I imagine he planned exactly where and when and how, because he was straight on and the parade was visible behind us. Our faces are laughing, smiling, charged. He captured it all." Gregory was particularly adept at capturing moments of activism. When LASC members Thea Lee and Dean Baker snuck a banner condemning bombing in El Salvador into a filming of NBC's Today Show on the U of M campus, Gregory photographed them unfurling the banner as the camera panned across the audience, and he also captured the police response as the activists were dragged out of the crowd. Gregory was really clear that his camera was his activist tool. It was his special skill, and he shared it generously. He knew that a particular moment was important in its time, but the ability to record it and use it to tell a story was just as important. If you have some time, I encourage you to go online to the local history archives on the website of the Ann Arbor District Library, or browse through the complete collection of agenda issues on that same site, or go to the Michigan Daily Web Archives and search Gregory Fox. His photographs are throughout, documenting our community's politics, but also art, community, and social life. If you look at the first issue of Agenda, an absolutely central part of progressive Ann Arbor activism for over a decade, you will see Gregory's credit on multiple pictures, and that continues throughout the run of the newspaper. As one of Agenda's founders, Lori Wechter, remembers, he not only photographed local Central America protests and events, but was very vocal and active in getting the word out via writing, protesting, and organizing. Gregory encouraged us that publishing an alternative newspaper was appropriate for the times, and his imprint on the paper was significant. Gregory helped birth and nurture Agenda in its early years, making it appear much more professional than it was. I should add that the earliest Michigan Daily reference to Gregory I found was not in the 1980s as a photographer. Rather, a 1967 article tells about a panel discussion on the draft being organized at Ann Arbor High School by then 17-year-old student Gregory Fox. Interestingly, the article was written by David Duboff, who was present in many of the actions Gregory would later photograph. Gregory's presence and personality was also so wonderful, not just his photography. His sense of humor was remembered by many at the regular meetings of LASK, whose political actions I mentioned earlier. Gus Teschke remembers that Gregory would regularly add during final announcements a call for people to attend a Contra dance. Gus added that it's not that Gregory actually danced, to anyone's knowledge. He just loved the playful sound. Toby Hannah Davies sharing this, the one thing I loved about Gregory was his sweet quirks, like showing his Canadian identity by always saying schedule for schedule and projects for projects, and showing his Jewish identity by teaching all of us to say tchotchkes for all the little gifts we brought home from our sister city trips to Nicaragua, and showing us his world citizenship identity by using chopsticks so often that our Nicaraguan friends thought that everyone Jewish uses chopsticks. I remember many sister city planning meetings at Guildhouse with Gregory, and his presence there, his special combination of humor and commitment to justice was a very important part of what kept me coming back. He helped make me a better person, and as I always say, tchotchkes still instead of knickknacks or trinkets, and then I think of Gregory. Lori Wechter remembers Gregory always made it plain that he was not American and that he disapproved of U.S. foreign policy. He made sure he never lost his Canadian accent. He had the look and feel of one who was gentle and sweet, with his soft, curly hair, rosy cheeks, and innocent face. It was always a surprise when he could be grumpy and speak his mind with a sharp-tongued comeback. It must have been rough looking so incredibly nice. I'd like to conclude with some words that Gregory wrote in 1986 after being arrested for trespassing at the local offices of our congressperson in protest of his votes in support of U.S. policy in Central America. He wrote in Agenda, "Being Jewish and being born just a few years after the end of World War II, the Nazi Holocaust was very much a part of the world I learned about as a child. I often contemplated that had my grandparents not left the old country, our entire family most likely would have been killed. As it was, the part of my family that didn't come over met the same fate as the 11 million other victims of the Nazis. It would send shivers up my spine to look at the old photos my grandmother showed me of her sisters who were taken away. I wondered why such cruelty was tolerated. I wondered if I would have behaved any better if I had been a non-Jewish German or Austrian. Those good citizens stayed within the law, but we know now how wrong they were." He continues, "Getting arrested for trespassing is an embarrassingly safe manner of protest, considering the monstrosity of the matter. Perhaps I did it for my own peace of mind, to assure myself that I'm not being a good German. Being easier on myself, I can hope that civil disobedience, done together with other moral people, will show our government that there are people here determined to call attention to their crimes." Gregory's skill in photography bridged from the political to the personal. He is who many of us turned to when we needed a photographer for weddings, senior pictures, or for Ruth and I, our children's B'nai Mitzvah celebrations. A traditional Jewish term of condolence goes, "May their memory be a blessing," in reference to the person who has passed away. Our memories of Gregory most certainly are blessings, but I would add that the memories Gregory gifted us of our lives together are blessings from Gregory as well. Zichrono Livracha.
And we'll be sharing some of those photos in the reception, which will take place shortly, and open up the microphone to hear more perspectives and tributes of Gregory. Gregory sort of sent us a message, which is through music. I played chrysanthemums earlier as people were coming in, and let that be a sort of subtle or subliminal message from him. And here's a more direct one, a piece of music that he would have us listen to. And I chose this moment for it because following it, I'll chant the El Malei Rachamim, the Jewish memorial prayer. And maybe you'll notice that I find it very similar in tone. So I feel like the adagio in strings is Gregory's El Malei. I won't be able to play all of it. Maybe I will play all of it in the reception hall. Let's play it together. Will you please rise for the Jewish memorial prayer? El Malei Rachamim, Shochem B'Hamromim, Hamtzei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei Hashchina, B'ma'alot Kedoshim U'Tehorim, Kezohar Harakia Mahazirim, L'nishmat haniftar Gregory Fox, Shehalach le'olamo, B'gan Eden tehei menuchato, Ana ba'al harachamim, Hastirehu b'seter kanafecha le'olamim, Utzror b'tzror hachayim, et nishmato. Adonai hu nachlato, v'yanuach b'shalom al mishkavo, v'nomar Amen. The overflowing well of compassion that is Adonai, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure souls, to the soul of Gregory Fox, who is now returning to that eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May his soul be bound up in the precious souls there waiting to embrace him, and may his soul continue to be bound up with the souls in this world, with whom he will forever be entwined. And in that way, may he rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. We may be seated. It's time for the mourner's Kaddish. I'm going to hand out a few. I'm going to ask family and those who consider themselves equivalent to family, anyone who feels called to do so, to rise for the mourner's Kaddish. In this booklet, it can be found toward the end on page 39 and 40. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah. Bi'alma divra kirute v'yamlich malchute. B'chayechon v'yomechon uv'chaye d'chol Beit Yisrael ba'agala uv'izman kari v'imru Amen. Yehe shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam ulamei amaya. Yiparach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei d'kudesha brichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran bi'alma v'imru Amen. Yehe shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. We may be seated. Let's all sing the final line together. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru Amen. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom. Shalom Aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom. Shalom Aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. His memory continues to bring many blessings. Let's share more of those blessings in the social hall, so I hope you can stay. Let's proceed over there, and we're also going to bring the screen to show some photos, and we are also going to open up the microphone for people to share tributes. Let's over there now and have some sustenance and some more words.